I'm here this evening with longtime friend of mine. Uh, Used to be a teammate for a little while before he moved away. Tony Deanda, now the head coach of Jamestown University in North Dakota.
University of Jamestown. Sorry.
University, sorry,
No worries.
sorry,
No,
University of
that's all right. I
Jamestown.
do it with other places like that, and I always mess it up. So no worries, no worries.
I told Miranda, one of your former athletes from Jamestown, I did an interview with, and actually she'll be on before yours. And I said I have a little disdain for Jamestown because my senior year was a Jamestown wrestler that beat me out of nationals. So I've always
oh,
kind of, so it kind of hurts deep down inside to Jamestown, seeing Jamestown stuff. But I'm over it now. I'm completely over it now. Um,
understand.
Tony, you started wrestling in Denison, Iowa. How did you get started wrestling?
I got started. There was a friend of mine, I forget his last name, that lived in the neighborhood that we lived in. We used to live in Myers Trailer Court outside of town,
Yep.
out going towards Carroll, right? And which was a unique experience in itself. But there was a neighborhood friend that lived there. I forget his last name, but his first name was Randy. And I thought I could beat him in wrestling, and of course he kicked my butt, and then he got me involved with the program at the elementary school that Coach Hagan was running. And
Uh-huh.
so ever since then, I was doing it from, I think it was like second grade until I got to high school.
I think Brent Hagan, I actually had him on not that long ago, and we had there's a story about how Tony was out for basketball as a freshman in high school. So how did that happen where you're out for basketball in high school and Brent Hagan comes up and pulls you out of the basketball practice?
Yeah, I tell that story quite a bit actually. When you're in middle school, you're able to do both, right? And there were some of my good friends that were on the that we would had success in basketball. I think one summer there was um, Arkfield was on there,
Yep.
David Pollock, but Brad Behrens was on the team. Todd Larson. Brad Behrens was came from a wrestling family, right? And but he
Yep.
also had height on his side, so he could actually probably fare a little better in basketball than I did. And when it came time to choose between basketball and wrestling, a lot of my friends were on the basketball team, so I went out for basketball. And I remember Coach Hagan going to the basketball practice and pulling me out of there and telling me, "What are you doing? What are you thinking?" And I'm very thankful to this day that he did that. Otherwise, I don't know where my life would have ended up. But he was one of the key figures in my life, I think, in terms of setting me in the right direction and following wrestling as something that I would enjoy the rest of my life. And so, um, but yeah, he's the one that convinced me that, hey, you're not going to get any taller. There's probably not a big future for you in basketball. And he was right. He was right. So I thank my lucky stars that I had him as a coach that helped me see the light, I guess you could say.
So I got to ask, are you any good at basketball?
I'm okay. I'm okay. I help my daughter. She thinks like, all I know is wrestling. And so, we've had some shootouts and I've gotten the upper hand on her, but I think Father Time's catching up with me. I don't know if I can, drive to the lane very well or anything like that, but I can still make some outside shots every now and then.
Nice, that's awesome. I am not. I've actually, when I was in college, was told I didn't have to come back to it any more intramural games at one point in time. That's bad. That's really bad if you don't get to play intramurals.
Yeah, I think when I played, it was probably more wrestling basketball. Like I could steal the ball, but I couldn't really make any shots that I wanted to make when the pressure was on. It's different shooting with my daughter than obviously in a game. And but I think defensively I was okay, but I didn't have really all the skills. And again, Coach Hagan convinced me of that, and so I'm thankful to this day because of that. So,
Yeah, and
anyways.
you had some wrestling skills, you had some wrestling ability. Because you in Denison, I remember you being varsity right away as a freshman.
Well, I had to wrestle Ted Foose, so I came
Okay.
prepared for this. But I got beat by Ted Foose in the wrestle off at the beginning of the year, and and that was the first time I was cut at had ever cut any weight or anything, and was starving myself to make it. And I think I ended up going up to 112 eventually. But then I think he ended up struggling to make the weight and couldn't make it anymore. And so then I was able to get back down to 105 and make the lineup. But I didn't win my wrestle off with Ted. Ted was tough. He was a senior at
Yeah.
the time. He was strong, physically mature, and I was just a freshman. And so he could beat me, but I think it's just making that 105 was tough for him. And
Yeah.
so anyways, yeah,
So
I remember that name, which is crazy.
it's kind of, so you almost have a Michael Jordan story here because you get beat as a freshman in the wrestle off, and you end up, you didn't stay in Denison. You ended up going to Sioux City with your family. You went to Heelan.
I
Uh,
did.
how
I
did that all happen?
Well, we ended up moving to South Sioux City, Nebraska, actually.
Okay.
My parents worked in the packing plants when we were in Denison, Iowa. They worked at Dubuque. My
Hmm.
mom had worked at Kronk's and kind of cleaning up after the restaurant had closed, right? And I remember going there and getting all the root beer floats I wanted, till I
Nice.
would just pass out until she was done. But yeah, we ended up moving my freshman year to South Sioux City, Nebraska, which was somewhere we had lived when I was like really young. And we kind of had lived in Omaha, then moved to South Sioux City, then moved to Denison. And we were in Denison for a long time and then moved back to South Sioux City. And I had cousins that went to Heelan. And, I at that time, I understood like that Iowa wrestling was a big deal, even though I didn't really know the culture of wrestling as a whole because I was just kind of learning that in my first year as a freshman, even though I was in the kids club. I had my dad who'd take us to a few tournaments around the area, but I really wasn't like that involved in wrestling because I would do all the other sports. I'd do football, I'd do soccer, I would do wrestling, I would do basketball. And so when we got to South Sioux City, my cousins were going to Sioux City Heelan. I was like, well, I want to go there since it's in Iowa. It was a private school. And, at that time, I said I lived in Sioux City with my uncle because it was more affordable if you were in Sioux City, because I
Uh-huh.
think you were out of diocese. If you lived in South Sioux City, it was like double the price or something. I think eventually they found out and then they didn't really care, which I was
Uh-huh.
fortunate about. But at the time, it wasn't like something my parents could afford. And so I had given my like uncle's address or something and it worked out. But yeah, it was different. It was different there. They had a decent team. We had a decent team. We had a guy that was there that had qualified for the state tournament, I think the year prior, who was the same year as me. I think his name was Chris Frakes. Um, and I'm just a new guy. I didn't qualify for state. I think I was like a place away when I was at Denison.
Hmm.
Um, and so then when I got there, I ended up wrestling off with Chris, and I made the spot, and having my cousins on the team, and eventually I was able to kind of I don't know, mesh with the team, I guess you could say. So, but it was tough at first. I missed Coach Hagen. Coach Hagen. I'm just very fortunate to have met him. And he kind of understood my situation where I lived in that trailer court outside of town, and my dad worked the night shift.
Yeah.
He worked the night shift at Dubuque at the packing plant, and so he wasn't going to take me in the morning. My mom didn't drive, and no one else could give me a ride. He would come get me in his little Honda car, I remember, with his coffee, and take me to those morning runs that were brutal, running inside the high school.
Oh yeah.
And I ended up taking that philosophy of those runs to Sioux City Heelan, and there it wasn't like a flat layout; it was like a 4-story school. So I'd go
Yep.
up on one side, run across, go down on the other side, and I would do that like 3 or 4 times a week to keep my shape, to manage my weight. But all that I got from him. My cousin would drive, and he'd sleep in the car, and then I would go run. And he said he was going to do it with me, but at least he would give me a ride. We shared driving going to school. But yeah,
That's
that's kind of, I guess, what happened when I got to Sioux City. Is I met my cousins. Long story short. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Short
You're
story
fine.
long. Short story
Yeah.
long.
No, no, you're absolutely fine. So, but at Sioux City, you found some success, a lot of success at Sioux City.
Yeah. I mean, the nice thing there is like there there were like 3 or 4 other schools, right? That were in the city. So sometimes in the summer where I think in Denison I would have probably had access to the room the whole time with Coach Hagan. I don't
Yeah.
disagree with that. But what was nice about Sioux City is I would go work out at different schools throughout the summer. If our coach couldn't open it up, then I would go to like South Sioux City, where my younger brother ended up going to school. Right,
Hmm.
he tried Sioux City Healing, but for like his freshman year, which was my senior year. But then he had all his friends in the public schools, so he stayed at the public schools, which was fine. I mean, that's what was he wanted, and he tried to play basketball too, but then figured out that wrestling was his ticket too. So, but yeah, that's I liked it there because I would be able to work out at different schools in the summer sometimes. And again, I don't know how it would have been in Denison, but like I said, Coach Hagan, I'm sure would have had that room open for us anytime. It's just a matter of like, I moved there and my parents, I don't know if my dad got laid off or something, but it was just, I think they wanted to move to start a business, a restaurant business that they still run to this day. If that was what they really were trying to do. But at that time, I was sad because I
Yep.
was leaving and I had grown attached to Coach Hagan and being one of his athletes. So,
Yeah. End up being a state champion at Heelan. That's pretty impressive to go from getting beat in that wrestle off to being a state champion. And obviously, you said kind of the key there. You did things when nobody else was doing them. You're running the halls. What do you think led to you getting to that state championship level?
I would have to say it's it just the philosophy of my parents. Just like I would see that my mom working late night at Kronk's, my dad coming home from the packing plants and working hard all the time, and I think of that I was just able to get their hard work ethic and transition that into wrestling is what I think was what helped me. I don't know, be gritty, tough, I guess, in the sport of wrestling was that kind of blue collar mentality. From seeing them, working double shifts and just making it a life for myself, my brother, and my 5 sisters, right? And
Yep.
so, and they never complained about it. They just did it, and we never felt like we were like. I mean, we weren't rich, but we never felt like we were poor, right? And so I took their hard work ethic and into the sport of wrestling, and I think that's what ultimately helped me. And I just happened to be at the right place at the right time with having someone like Coach Hagan there to get me going, to get me started. So, um, so yeah, I think that's what those are the things that helped me to achieve, I guess, because
Oop, we might have froze up for just a second there, Tony.
that's all right.
Yeah, we're in a storm, so I might have little incidents where we
No
freeze up
worries.
here and there, but no worries.
No
So
worries.
then you made your way, you got to college,
Yeah.
first
Yeah.
year Augustana, and then how did you go from there to Nebraska? I've always kind of wondered that.
Well, I have to go back, like my parents didn't go to college, right? And so, and no one in our family had gone to college. I had a younger sister that did, Shelly. You knew Shelly as
Yeah, I
well.
knew Shelley. Yep.
Elsa, Shelly. It's actually Elsa Araceli, but we always call her Shelly. Yeah. Um, you know, I when I won my state championship, I thought, well, I'm going to go wherever I want. I didn't know how it worked. I'm a state
Uh-huh.
champ. I thought it was, that was like the ultimate, but college is another level. There's guys that are multiple state champs. There's guys that win Fargo. There's all this other stuff, right? That I had no clue about really. I did go to Fargo my senior year, but up to that point, I hadn't gone to the Fargo or any national tournament whatsoever. So, I called Don Briggs at UNI.
Hmm.
There was a guy that was going there that I had beaten, and I was like, hey, I'm wondering if you got a spot. And I wasn't really even asking for a scholarship at that time. I just wanted to wrestle,
Uh-huh.
and uh, so no, they've already had enough people, I think, in around the weights. They weren't really interested. And then I kind of had also reached out to UNO, and I think they already had a lot of tough guys at UNO too. So they really weren't recruiting the weight that I was going to be at. And I had run into this guy named Troy Budden, who's Chad Budden's brother. Chad was the one that went to UNI. Yeah,
Okay.
they were from the same place as the Brands. They were from Sheldon, Iowa, and he said, hey, I'm going to Augie. I'm in my senior year. Why don't you come check us out? So I went on a visit there, and that's how I ended up at Augustana. And so, for a while there, I was getting recruited pretty hard by the coach at Takeo Westmar. I think that's where
Hmm.
Chad Shook went to school,
Yep.
right?
Shook
Yeah.
went there. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And there
That
was
was in my conference too. Yeah, Westmar was, that would have been Milt Martin.
Milt Martin. He was great. He was awesome.
Yep.
You know what? He was at my folks' restaurant like every other week, like trying to talk to me. And I mean, he was the guy that probably recruited me the most, but he was the only one. He was really the only
Hmm.
one. I mean, I got stuff in the mail. Ended up going to Augie. I was there for 2 years. I redshirted my first year. I had broken my thumb. Redshirt, got medical hardship, and then I was an All-American the following year. And my cousin, the one that would fall asleep when we would run in the mornings at Heelan, he was like, come on, you can make the team in Nebraska. Why don't you he just wanted me to go to Nebraska and, live with him and have fun in college. Right. And so I
Yep.
wasn't really sure if that's what I wanted to do. But I told myself if I'm an All-American this year, then I'm going to at least give it a shot. And that's how I ended up at Nebraska as I walked on. Yeah. I had walked on there and didn't make the lineup my first year. They had Frankie Velasquez, who was an All-American from the previous year. And then I ended up having to wrestle off with Jason Reitmeyer. And Jason Reitmeyer he was from Worthington. He's the current Augustana coach. Yeah.
Okay.
At, at Sioux Falls. Yeah. So we actually
Uh-huh.
ended up flipping spots. Yeah. He ended up after I won the wrestle off. He ended up transferring out, going to Augie, was a national champion there. And then I ended up wrestling my last 2 years at Nebraska as a starter.
Very nice.
Yeah.
And I ran into you years and years and years later when I know I was done wrestling, but you were still at 2005 in Ames at the World Team Trials. And I hear over the loudspeaker Tony Deanda to Matt Four. I honestly believe it was Matt Four. And I looked out and I saw a little short guy. His singlet was kind of hiked up like it always been when he wrestled at Denison. I was like, that's Tony Deanda. I know him. And I went and talked to you. You were living at you were living at the Olympic Training Center. Man,
Yep.
that's kind of crazy. How did that all happen? And you wrestled a long time. You really, I mean, you
I
competed
did.
for.
I did. I probably wrestled too long. My body feels it now, right? Uh, I don't know. I think college was. I didn't feel like I had accomplished my goals in college. There was a lot of weight cutting that went on in college. That as a coach now, I really don't obviously push weight cutting at all.
Yep.
Obviously, sometimes people gotta go up or go down if they're not making the lineup. And maybe now it's more weight management, right? If they want to go down or if they want to go up, if that's what is best. But, I think in college, it was like we got better because of talent in the room. And this isn't a knock on
Hmm.
the coaches in any way. I think the science of wrestling has gotten a lot better um, since then. And it's just it was more about making weight than it was really about improving. And so after I was done with college, I felt like I improved a lot more technically because I would just wrestle up fat and have fat and happy. and
Yep.
um and that's where I felt my technique, my understanding for wrestling, my passion for wrestling improved. And so and I really feel like freestyle was better suited for the way I process technique too. The transitions are quicker. There's more options. It isn't so reliant on as much as conditioning. Not that there isn't technique. Obviously, it's very technical, but I always prided myself on being a little bit more athletic, and so I felt like freestyle was more suited for me. And so I did wrestle too long, but I'm glad I did, because those last 2 years were the best 2 years that I had in my career, where I was able to do well, where I was able to manage my weight better, because I wrestled 69 kilos, 66 kilos, and then I wrestled 60 kilos, which was lighter than I had wrestled in college, which was 134. And so those are the best results that I had. Even though I was wrestling up and getting better and learning, I was trying to put it all together there at the very end. And it was good, because, like I said, it's where I had the best results.
So that World Team Trials was the first time I ever saw women's wrestling, because they featured it on the stage. I think they had four mats in the middle on the stage, and I'm fortunate my father-in-law was a Cyclone Club member, and I had second row seats, and I
Nice.
could not stop watching the women's wrestling, and it was just because it was just exciting. There was more stuff going on, and
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
how did you get into coaching women? Because you've been coaching women for a long time, a very long time.
I, I've been coaching women's wrestling the longest in the U.S. I don't know if that means anything. Not bragging, not saying that. It's just if it's on trivia anywhere. There used to be some coaches like Carl Murphy that was at Missouri Valley, but he retired.
Yep.
And
Yep.
then there was the coach at Simon Fraser, Mike Jones, that had been, those guys that obviously had coached longer than I had. But then once they retired, Shannon Gillespie would have been next, but he took some years off,
Okay.
coaching high school. So I was able to surpass him. Yeah. I got started. It was never really like something, that I was looking to do. Is like, I want to coach women's wrestling. I'm not here to say that was the case. It was more like I would be at the Olympic Training Center, and I would watch, I'd go through our practice, then I would watch the Greco practice. Then I would watch the women's practice, and they were usually like back to back to back like that. I don't think they're like that anymore, because the way that they got the setup there, it's a bigger room. But at that time, it would be like they would all kind of be in a row, and I would learn a lot from Terry Steiner.
Uh-huh.
I think there was stuff that Terry was teaching that I wish I was learning. Sometimes I think when I was there at the Olympic Training Center, we had a lot of rotation of coaches that came through there when I was there. And so there wasn't really any structure when it came to learning like formal freestyle, right? It was kind of more like we would have, I remember we had Lincoln McElravy was there, and then he came out of retirement, and Lincoln, I knew Lincoln as like a young man in high school, because his brother Clayton went to school with me at Augustana.
hmm
Yeah, he was like a year or two older. Or he was like 3 or 4 years older than me. I think he was a senior my freshman year at Augie. Clayton was. But then, I was wrestled for so long. Lincoln had retired after 2000 Olympics. And then when I came to the training center, he was the resident coach. But then he ended up coming out of retirement. And in that transition, we had coaches like Coach Gable came in for like a week or two. We had Mike MacArthur, Steve Knight. We had then we ended up having like permanent coaches that were there a little bit longer, like Sergey Beloglazov was there. And then I'm missing somebody. I know Coach Jackson was there too, but he was the national coach. He wasn't necessarily the
Yep.
resident coach. But he was very instrumental in coaching, but he wasn't the one that ran the practices daily, right? And so then we got on my last year, we had Terry Brands. And at the time, I didn't really like that, because there was no consistency, right? We had all these coaches, and it was great to meet them all, and they all had great stuff, but there was no like routine, no system in place. And that's something that I learned to appreciate more as a coach, because the knowledge, they all had something that was good, obviously, because that's what
Yep.
made them great. And so I was able to channel that more into my coaching career than I did maybe my athletic career. To go with, so I would stick around the practices, and Coach Steiner came up to me and was like, "Hey, we're looking to start this program at Northern Michigan." it's called the USOEC, the United States Olympic Education Center. And this was in 2000. This was in 2004. This was for the head coaching position. I'm like, nope,
Okay.
I just got done with the Olympic trials. I had just lost a very close match to Mike Zadek. I want to go one more year and then call it good, because that
Uh-huh.
was the first time I had made 60 kilos was at the Olympic trials. I had placed there, and I'm going to go one more year. I'm not going to get into coaching looking back. Yeah. So I turned the job down. And then after 2005, Terry approached me about the assistant position, and I was like, and it was kind of more like, hey, do you want the job? And it
Hmm.
wasn't like I was interviewing for the job. It was like, well, what's wrong with this place, right? Like, can I at least look at what's out there, and or travel out there to see what it looks like. And so then they did. They flew me out, and as they're flying in, you don't really see the town of Marquette. All you see is snow. This was in winter. And I'm like, oh man, no wonder they're sending me out here. This is like Siberia out here, right? And then we get into the town. The town's nice. It's right on Lake Superior. I liked it. There's a lot of trees, a lot of snow, and so I ended up liking it. And I took the position and was there for 6 years. And I liked freestyle more than I did at folk style at that time. And there wasn't a lot of like positions to coach freestyle at that time.
Yeah.
It was just, the regional training centers weren't really a thing as much then, right? And so that's where I got my start, is through Terry Steiner gave me the opportunity to be an assistant coach out there. And I haven't looked back, I guess.
Who was that? Did you coach with Shannon out there?
I did. I was Shannon's assistant for
Okay.
6 years. Yeah.
That's
Shannon started the program there in 2005. And then I left in 2011, and I think they closed the program in 2012.
okay. And so about 20, when did you get to Jamestown the first time around?
2011. That was in
2011.
2011. That was my first head coaching opportunity. And again, I owe all the credit to Terry Steiner. Terry Steiner's from North Dakota. Yeah, he's a legend in North Dakota, and him and his brother Troy. The fact that I had worked with Terry as a national coach and in Marquette, his name carries a lot of weight in the state, obviously, in terms of the
Oh yeah.
wrestling circles. And then the coach that was here prior to me, Cisco Cole, that started the women's program here, I also had a good relationship with him. When he stepped down, he had mentioned my name as well to the administration. So I got that opportunity to be a head coach the first I was here. Yeah.
Yeah, and you've done to a few different places. So I guess starting programs, building programs is something that's kind of, a lot of Iowa coaches are looking at that right now because there's a lot of programs in the state of Iowa, and we're fighting for the same, fighting for the same people. But I don't know if I have everything down right. You went out to Providence. Is that our
I
Providence?
did.
And
I did. Yep. I
went
was there for
there.
1 year.
Okay. And then the next thing I think I saw you at Presbyterian.
Correct. I
And
ended up going
so
there. I was there for about 2.5 years. 2.5 years.
so
Yep.
I just got to ask, what is a blue hose?
Yeah, we're the Jimmies here, and
Yes.
sometimes people don't know what that is, right? It's the name in reference to the name James. We have the James River,
Uh,
the Jamestown Basilica, and so it's a night. But sometimes people ask that as well. And then I was the blue hose, yeah, at one time, and that's in reference to the stockings that the football team wore. I guess back in the day when they first had a football team, they would wear blue socks. And so the
okay.
name Blue Hose became kind of their nickname, versus they're actually like a Scottish, a Scots Irish warrior is what they're supposed to be. Yeah.
Okay.
This is what, but they have the nickname Blue Hose because of those stockings. So yeah, you get some weird
It's
looks, but yeah,
yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't know.
you've you know
It's
you
different.
haven't picked a place yet that has just a normal mascot, have you?
Well, that's what I said when I went to Northern Michigan. What? Okay, Wildcats a little more normal.
There you go. One of the things I just got, like I said, I just got done interviewing Miranda, and we
Yeah,
were talking, and she said the pandemic, right, and canceling nationals at Jamestown. You know, Jamestown had the
yeah,
nationals for a long time. What was that like to
yeah.
have to tell your athletes that? That's got to be horrible.
Well, I wasn't here then.
Oh, you were gone
I
then.
wasn't I
Okay.
wasn't the coach here when that pandemic went on. When the pandemic went on, I was in the transition of going from.
We may have froze up just a little bit again
Wasn't the
quick, but
coach
we're
at the
coming
time.
back. We're coming back now.
Okay, okay, yeah, I wasn't the coach during that time. I couldn't believe what that you know you're working all year and what that would have been like. I mean, I think for us, where I was at Presbyterian, we just got done with the season, and then I think when it hit, I was like, our athletes didn't come back when I was at Presbyterian, and I had taken another job, so I didn't even really get to say like goodbye in person.
Oh, wow.
So that kind of was really weird and odd, right?
Uh-huh.
Because here I am moving to a new position, and there was this time where um, people weren't back in school, right?
Yeah.
There was this
What a weird
longer
time.
break that they gave this longer break, and it was just where I was in transition, and then the whole thing hit. So, but yeah, I remember they canceled that. I couldn't imagine going through that because you work so hard for something like that, and then it doesn't happen, right?
Yeah. What a weird time. What a weird time that
It
was.
was, it was a weird time. It was
Um, so up to Northern Michigan and now back to Jamestown. Does it feel
correct.
like you came home?
It does. It does. I feel like my life's like a circle. It's like um, it,
It's a
it, it
Lion
feels
King
good
movie.
because I spent 6 years here, and the
Uh-huh.
places that wasn't right for me. And some places were right for me, but when I was at Presbyterian, it was more like it was an assistant position, more so just the way
Hmm.
that the format was structured there. It was more. I actually was the men's coach there,
Okay.
and I was the women's assistant, and then later on it changed, but uh, it was just a different format. It wasn't necessarily like I was a head coach in title, but it was more of an assistant position in terms of like I got a family and I'm trying to make a little bit more money, right? And so,
Yep.
but I'm very thankful to have been at Presbyterian, and my experience there was great because the wrestling director there is Mark Cody, who was my coach at Nebraska. That's how I
Oh,
ended up there. So I was
uh-huh.
able to help him. He trusted myself and my wife, my ex-wife, to help him start the program at Presbyterian. Yeah, and so we were there for 2.5 years, and then I got an opportunity to come back also to Northern Michigan, and then back to the University of Jamestown, which I feel very fortunate and blessed to have been at some of these places more than once. Yeah. And
Hmm.
so, and just very thankful, very thankful. And like I said, I wouldn't have came back to some places if I didn't enjoy it the first time. And, and I wouldn't have spent as much time as I did in both those places. I was at the USOEC for 6 years, and I was here for 6 years the first time, and they were great, and I had a great experience there, and I had coached a lot of great people and got to work with a lot of great people. I think for me, being back in Jamestown, it's closer to the Midwest. Yeah,
Yep.
being out in South Carolina was definitely different, even though it was great and there's great people there too. Same thing with Michigan, but it just I think North Dakota still has more of a Iowa Midwestern feel that I'm used to. Yeah,
You
and
probably
there's
can
just
get down
great.
and see mom and dad.
I do get down to see them a lot more. Yes, yes, and that also is nice. I mean, coming back to this area, like I said, it's different because there's more women's programs. The first time I had left, none of the states had girls wrestling sanctioned. There was no Minnesota. There was no South Dakota. There was no North Dakota. There was no Montana. I was getting a few athletes from Canada, but most of them were like either like Texas, Hawaii,
Yep.
California, some East Coast athletes, Florida. Hawaii and Florida coming to North Dakota was definitely, challenging sometimes, but there wasn't a lot of options back then. And Jamestown is a great school too, strong academic school. And they had a history of having a lot of Hawaii athletes in their first year or two before I came on as a head coach. So that also helped. But then they adding a few more programs to the state where you can have a few day trips, a few competitions during the season. At that time, I was traveling to like Oklahoma City, driving a bus.
Yep.
For how many hours. We would leave on a Wednesday and then come back like Monday morning, like 2 a.m. or something crazy. So it was a lot of driving. I don't complain because I got that opportunity. It's just now it's different with girls wrestling sanctioned and in the surrounding states and within the state. More programs, being closer to family, all that helps. So,
It's
and the
fantastic.
transition back to D2 also is nice.
So, have you coached at all levels now? Except for JUCO, but you've done an NAIA school, right? You've done
I've done
D1, D
NAIA.
because Presbyterian's D1, isn't it?
Yeah, they were the first Division I women's
Yeah.
program. Yep. So
And so
that was like a
you've kind of
historical moment.
have you done any D3 is the only thing
I
you
have not done any D3. I have not. I
okay.
have not.
So you've always been able to give the scholarship for athletics.
Correct. Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So when you're out looking for, because I talked to a lot of different coaches, what are you looking for in your athletes when they come to Jamestown?
You know, uh, uh, that was a question that was like brought up my like first year coaching here at Jamestown, and I give the credit to our volleyball coach here, John Hagerly. And I even brought that up this year as well. He's had a lot of success here as a volleyball coach, and it was in one of our staff meetings. He says, "You know what I look for?" He says, "I look for low maintenance, low maintenance." And I talked to my sister Shelly. She's like, "Tony, I don't know that you could spice that up a little bit." And she's, I look. She says it probably sounds better if you say I look for initiative.
There you
And so
go.
I go with initiative, and I go with open mindedness. I think if you have those two things, obviously you have to have good grades as well. That's important. It's gotten more important the longer I've coached. But I would say the three primary things: that strong academic grades, initiative, and open mindedness. Those are the three
And
things that
now
I typically look for.
and now more importantly, what are you hoping that the girls take away from you from being in your program?
Well, hopefully they're taking away a few different things. One is just accountability, right? That they're here, they have goals, and that if they can have a successful career here, they're that they're just like the sport of wrestling gives you so many things, right? I mean, that's the reason that I did it for so long. Sure, I got things from my parents as well, and I transitioned that into wrestling, but hopefully they remember how hard they worked and who they helped along the way. Those are the two main things that I hope that they get out of this program.
So, yeah, I've been coaching a number of years too, and actually, Coach Hagen's the one that brought me back into coaching. But so we kind of have we have a lot of that in common. But what has kept you coaching as long as you have?
What has kept, I don't know, I just still enjoy it. I feel like I'm learning something every day. I think that that's what made it fun as as an athlete, is that every day could be something different, right? Obviously you had have consistency in the things that you do, so they become routine and you can do them what instinctually, but there's the mind can wander a lot. You can create moves. You could every day could be a new day in practice. You could score with something you never scored with. And I think as a coach, kind of I don't know, trying to reach the athletes in different ways, not only on the mat but off the mat. you know, Sometimes you're struggling with something or there's something tough going on in their life, and and the fact that you're able to help them or connect in some way, I still find that I have passion for the sport because I don't know everything. I'm always still eager to learn, right? And so that maybe is what keeps me going.
So I 100% agree with you. Absolutely love learning every time I go to something. Yesterday, and you might remember the name, but now you have athletes that are now coaching. And yesterday I was at a practice and we went to Des Moines for an AAU. We're going down to do scholastic duels. And Alana Vederick, I don't know if you remember that name, wrestled at Midland University, but
I do
Alana
remember
Warren.
that name.
Yeah, she was an All-American for Midland, but she ran the practice for us yesterday because I really feel how important it is to have some representation, right? And
Right on.
man, I learned so much just about how it was cool to have somebody. I know she was never my athlete, but I remember her wrestling, and I got to be friends with her while I just first started coaching women's wrestling, and now she's going to Florida with us as a coach. But the way she did things, she's probably 30 now. We've been around a long time, but just to see those younger ones coming and doing it in a different way, that's something I
Oh
think
yeah,
is so
yeah.
cool. What's it like to have like your former athletes becoming coaches and actually being your competition now?
I think it's good. I mean, I see them at tournaments, so it's nice to see familiar faces, right? And uh, I think sometimes is like as a coach, you're wondering if certain things resonated with them when they were here as athletes. And I've had conversations with some of my former athletes that are now coaches, and I think there's certain things that they didn't understand at the time, but they understand it now of why I did the things that I did now that they're coaches. And so it kind of is full circle in that regard. And the fact that they're able to stay involved in the sport and continue to have the same passion, I don't know. I'm proud of them, proud of them.
Yeah.
I feel fortunate and blessed to be able to see them and still, because sometimes you don't see athletes for a long time and you wonder how they're doing. I'm fortunate to see a few of them from time to time and still have that connection with them on an ongoing basis. So I don't look, yeah, we're competing on the mat, but we're still friends after the fact. So
Yes. Um, I would say when I first started coaching, I was not a very good coach. I think I wanted to I beat kids up in the room so they knew I was a better wrestler than them, right? And now I can't even hardly wrestle anymore. I'm sure you're getting to the point where, man, those knees don't work the same and shoulders and stuff. But I know I've evolved as a coach over this whole period. What do you think is the big difference between young coach Deanda and a more seasoned coach Deanda?
I think, when it comes to like women's wrestling, I was trying to run practices like how I went through practice,
Hmm.
and this is another reason why I think uh, I'm still passionate about the sport is like the same type of athlete that I was coaching when I first got into women's wrestling isn't the same kind of athlete today, and so the way that I coach, I think, has changed from when I first got started, but so has the athlete. And so being able to adjust not only from how I was coached, because in the beginning I would I wanted to have like these physical practices and it can be physical, but it doesn't all have to be physical every day. And everybody's different. So I make it more where we're maybe wrestling live twice, three times at the most if we're doing like a live parterre, but usually it's like twice a week we're doing live because the college season is pretty crazy where you're competing every weekend, and if you're just leaving it all in the practice room during the week, then there's a lot of injuries that happen. And
Yep.
so I think that early on there was the practices I was trying to like make them like I went through practice, right? And I think that's also part of like coaching where a lot of coaches make the mistake of like teaching athletes what worked for them. Now, if they have a similar body built, like body type, they're
Yep.
shorter or they're lankier, then maybe, yeah, you can show them things that you did if it's a similar body type or a similar like way of thinking. But, um, you know, I try to teach things that can reach the masses more, right? Like more of the team, and then teach the individuals the skills that might be individualized in that regard. But um, what has changed? What has changed is I've been able to figure out a better way of coaching that works for the teams that I've had and works for me too. I think I would get frustrated about some things early on that I really didn't need to get frustrated about. It was just me learning more how to coach early on.
Yep.
And just because I was a decent wrestler doesn't mean I'm a good coach right away.
Yeah, it takes time. Everything takes time and a lot of work. Um, Part of
Yes.
these interviews that I do, I think it's really important to get to know people, not just as wrestlers. And I actually, one of the first few I did, I had a mom say, "I really wish you'd ask some questions that weren't just about wrestling because I don't really care about all these things." So I've made important things that we talk about. Um, Food. Wrestlers love food, right? What is your
Yeah.
what's that guilt? What is your guilty pleasure? I love this stuff. I don't ever I will never give this up again. What's that food for you?
Um, Guilty food. I have Haagen Dazs every now and
You're an
then.
ice cream guy.
Ice
Do you
cream, ice cream. Yeah,
do you think that came from those early morning Brent Hagen runs where we had ice cream and cereal?
probably. Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
I cut the cereal out just because, but the ice cream I haven't been able to give that up. Probably, you're probably right. Going back to Coach Hagen, I remember he was a cross country coach, right?
Yep, yep.
He was a cross country coach and he was the wrestling coach, obviously. Did he coach anything else? I think those were the main two, right?
He ended up
Golf?
coaching girls golf. Yes.
That's right. But that was later, right? That was after I
Yeah,
had left, I think, right?
yeah, for
Uh,
sure.
but I remember him, we would go on these runs and I would watch him run. And I was like, man, why is he running like that? Because he was hobbling.
Yeah,
And then, and I always still think about him running then and just hobbling along. And I was like, man, that's not going to be me. And you know what? It is
it
me. It is me.
it is. Yeah, I'm scheduled next week to get a couple shots in my knees again, so it's
Oh,
time. So, that's we're
wow.
there. Um,
Yeah.
I've never been to Jamestown. I need to come up sometime. But
Yes. Yes.
if I come up, where's the place to go out to eat?
We got this place called Johnny B's. They have like brick, what is it? Brick fire
Pizza?
pizza. It's pretty good.
Yes.
I get this like Thai pizza that's pretty good. Um, it's a little pricey, but I would say that's my favorite place in town is Johnny B's. They have
Okay.
wings. They have different beers on tap and stuff. I'm not really a beer drinker, but they have this cider there that's not bad. But I go there for the pizza and trivia night on Tuesdays sometimes with our women's soccer coach.
So you're a trivia guy, huh?
A little bit.
A little
I think
bit.
he just has me go because I'm over the hill and so I might know a lot of the answers that he won't know because they were before his time. I think that's why he takes me, not because he's being nice.
Get you get old sitcom questions and stuff like that. Gotcha. You've got to travel quite a bit from
Yes, that's
wrestling.
it. That's the only reason he
Yes.
takes me.
Yeah, you've been able to travel a lot, because wrestling's taking you all over. But if you could have one spot, that bucket list vacation that you haven't been able to go to, where is that place?
Wow. I've been to a lot of places. I haven't been to. There's still a lot of places that I would like to go. Um, hmm. I don't know. I've always like going to like the islands. Yeah, I've been to Hawaii. I've been to the Dominican Republic for Pan Am's. I've been to Cuba. But I always saw like these ads for like the Seychelles, the islands out there in the Indian Ocean, where the ocean is just like turquoise color, like
Ooh,
it doesn't even look real, right? So
yep.
something like that, maybe probably never will end up there, but maybe one day. We never
Maybe
know.
one day. So I've come to the conclusion that people are
Yeah,
either mountain people or they're beach people. Those are the two divides right there. And I think if you live in the Midwest, you're a beach person for the most part because we don't get them.
right on, right on. Yeah, that makes
Uh,
sense. That makes sense. It makes sense.
Anything
I
we're
would agree with that.
are you anything you're binging on TV right now?
Uh, Not really. Every now and then on Netflix, would watch some different stuff. I think, I've seen like that Dexter one
Oh,
for a while,
yes.
and then there was some other stuff on there that I would have to, obviously some of these I'd have to watch when my kids were asleep and stuff like that. But I don't know. I'm not really binging on anything right now. I just watched the fight with Ronda Rousey and Gina Carano and some of the other fighters that were on there as well. That was um, the most recent thing I watched, but I don't know. I haven't found something that I guess that I liked recently. Some of the other ones was like those narco ones and
Uh-huh.
the ones with Dexter, and then the one with Jason Bateman. What was that
Oh,
one? The one with
Ozark?
Ozarks. I watched
Yes.
that. I think I fell asleep through some of them, but there was a lot of good ones that I didn't fall asleep. And so I can't remember them. I have to kind of go through that series again because I think I fell asleep on a few of them, yeah. And so I didn't really like tie it all together, but I watched the Ozarks. I watched the one with God, what is that other one? It was like this show where they would go into this underworld and
Wasn't Stranger Things, was it?
Stranger Things. That's what it was. That's what it was. I watched that with my kids. Then they would watch the one with the kid that was from like his dad was a football coach, and they're from the South,
Ooh.
and he's like a really smart. He has a brother that's kind of more of a kind of a just like a
Wouldn't have been Young Sheldon, would it?
yeah, it is young
I'm
Sheldon.
pretty good at this.
So
I should go to trivia with you too.
yeah, I can't think of all the names of them now, but so I haven't watched all the Young Sheldon ones, but I have watched a few of them with my kids, and I like that one. I like that one. We've all run into people like Sheldon,
Oh yeah.
and like the brother and like the sister, and
Yeah.
so and the mom and dad. So it's like very relatable. Uh, so I like that
Um,
one.
I just got just a few questions left for you.
Okay.
And this one, what's that one thing that you could say wrestling taught me to do this? Wrestling has taught me this.
Man, there's so many things that it has taught me. It's hard to really narrow it down to one thing, but I would say that things are not things are not always the same. They're not always the same. It's always changing, right? And it's just like knowing to be able to adjust um, on the mat, just like adjusting to tough situations in life. I mean, I'm I'm not here to sing a sad story or say a sad story, but I think we all run into tough moments in our lives,
Yep.
whether it's through our families or whether it's at work or whatever it may be. But it's just taught me that things are always changing, and it's important to to keep up, stay ahead, or to know that it's not the end of the world, and to keep not giving up. So
Yeah.
I think those are the things that I always take from wrestling. I mean, you have two choices. You could keep fighting or stop fighting, right? And I'm
Yep.
not going to stop fighting, and that's maybe what keeps me in the sport.
Very good. Now, you've been around the girls wrestling now, the longest college wrestling coach of women's wrestling.
That doesn't
Maybe
mean that
this
that could mean different
I think
things,
it's
right?
great.
Not so good, and maybe
I know the longest last I know the guy. I'm gonna win a trivia contest sometime. I might even use it as a trivia.
I'm also the first male to coach both men's and women's Division 1 head
Oh,
coach.
there you go. Yeah, I got two.
Yeah, so
I sometimes I don't know if you ever remember this, but Coach Hagan used to ask trivia questions sometimes in practice, like what are the three universities in Iowa? No, there's four universities in Iowa that have won a national title. Can you name them?
4.
Yes.
Yep, I think I can name them.
A
I think I can
D1
name them.
national title. A D1 national title.
Okay. Iowa, UNI, right?
Yep. Yep.
Um, I or University of Iowa, Iowa State, UNI,
And at
Is
the time,
Drake
it was actually it was the
teachers
Iowa Teachers College is what
teachers
it was at
college
that time.
teaching?
There's
Yeah.
one other one
So
though. There's one
those
other one. There's one
oh
more.
gosh, I want to say Drake, was Drake ever Division 1?
They were D1, but they didn't win a title. You probably will never guess it because they're D3 now.
Grandview?
Nope.
No.
Cornell.
Okay. Yeah, I would have
Cornell
never guessed
College.
that. I would.
Yeah, Cornell College won
Wow.
one. But now I have a trivia question that no one will get, and I can make them run until they get the trivia question right.
They,
So,
they Coach
but
Hagan used to do that. That's
yeah,
I don't I remember a lot like the jogging and stuff like that, and then him pulling me out of basketball practice, right? But I remember the runs in the hallways too. I hated doing those,
yep,
but the trivia question. Maybe that's why I ask questions all the time in practice. I probably get that from him. Yeah.
might be.
Yeah.
But my question on that is, so over the years, I'm sure this has changed, but what do you think it means now to wrestle like a girl?
Well, I think it just means that they're accepted, right? I think that for a lot of years, it wasn't accepted, right? It was,
Yeah,
I remember getting involved in women's wrestling, and I had former teammates of mine tell me, why are you coaching women's wrestling? And I just never looked at it like that. I think it just means that it's like having women's basketball. No one really thinks about that anymore, right? It's like
yep,
it's accepted now. It's part of the culture of wrestling. It's not looked at as wrestle like a girl, which is still a great name. I'm just saying it's not. It's just looked at as um, they're another wrestler.
yep.
Yeah. And so I
What
think
is
that that's come a long ways since I first got involved. I'm not saying that there isn't still areas where there's still that fight that goes on. I'm sure there is, right? But I think not to the degree of when I first got started. And
oh, for sure.
so it's taken organizations like that to really put women's wrestling on the map. The fact that this was the first year it was an NCAA sport. I mean, I can remember for as long as I'd been in women's wrestling that it was the fastest growing sport in the high school level. And
Yep,
I'm like thinking, well, then why isn't it sanctioned yet? Right. And so it's taken a long time. And there's been a lot of instrumental people that have been involved in getting it to where it is. And Wrestle Like a Girl is one of those organizations that's been fighting on the front line for as long as they've been around. And so I think what it means now is that they're part of the club. They've always have been, but now it's just like it's official, right? It's an
yep.
NCAA sport. It's been an Olympic sport since 2004. It only took 22 years more for the NCAA to finally, make it
Oh,
happen. Just 22. It's crazy.
what has kept you with women's wrestling for these years? What keeps bringing you back to coaching women?
I don't know. I think that I always think that when I first got involved, they were listening to what I was saying. Like they were eager to learn, and that's not that guys aren't eager to learn, but I think it was like they were more eager to learn because sometimes maybe they weren't in the right situation uh, back home. Like we would have athletes that really weren't coached early on when I
Hmm.
first got in. It was like they were just kind of off to the side with the guys team, right? And
Yep,
now the fact that there's sometimes most of the time separate coaching staffs, or the coach that's coaching both actually takes the girls side or the women's side seriously. And so, it circle back. What was the question again, Troy? There was a question. I want to I want to
what's
tie
kept
it
you
back in.
what's kept you doing women's wrestling this long?
Well, I told you I got started because it's freestyle, right? I feel like,
Yep.
I did do a little folk style when I was at Presbyterian, but I always felt like there was just, I enjoyed freestyle. I felt like I was part of this movement that got women's wrestling going at the college level, and that's just felt where I felt at home. And so I thank people that were in my life, like Coach Hagan, Terry Steiner. I thank all those people. I thank Shannon Gillespie, for I learned a lot from him. I was
Yeah.
very fortunate to be an assistant coach first, then like right away to be a head coach. I wasn't ready to be a head coach. I was glad that things worked out the way they did. And I've been fortunate to work with a lot of great athletes too. And I don't know. That's where I've always felt at home is, when it was women's wrestling and it was freestyle. Um, and so I'm happy to still be doing it. And I don't know. I guess I've just been fortunate to be able to get involved with the right people at the right time. So I don't
Awesome.
know. I could say I was lucky, or I don't know. But I enjoy doing it. I have a passion for it still, and I have a daughter now that wrestles, and so maybe that also helps. A little bit. It's like it's tough being a coach and also coaching your daughter,
Yep.
right? And so, uh, but she's figuring out her way. Sometimes it's better to kind of step back a little bit, and you see a lot of that from the perspective of other parents, when you're recruiting, but then it's always different when you're coaching your own kid. And
It for
so,
sure is.
um, so I'm learning in different ways now, in that aspect. That's a whole different element. But I don't know. I'm around good people here at Jamestown. I'm fortunate to be back in the Midwest. It's a familiar place here. We got an AD here that was a former wrestler himself. That also helps. We have great facilities. Um, there's people I know that that are connections from when I was in Nebraska that are from North Dakota. Not just Terry Steiner, obviously went to Iowa, but there was other connections at Nebraska that were from this area as well. And so, whether it's their coaches, and they know the athletes that I coached with or that I wrestled with at Nebraska. So I don't know. I like North Dakota. Parents are close. But yeah, I don't know. I still enjoy it, and I'm going to keep doing it as long as the body holds up. Right.
Very good.
So,
That's awesome. I know I you kind of I'm going to give you my last question for you. And normally I would ask for final thoughts, but I'm going to say since you're coaching in Jamestown and I know probably my most targeted audience is high school girls, right?
yeah.
Give me your recruiting pitch for coming to Jamestown.
Well, we got great coaches. We got great facilities. We got strong academics. This is a safe environment, safe area. We're right in between Bismarck and Fargo. Um, we're going to compete. If we're getting athletes from Iowa and Nebraska, we're going to go down to Iowa and Nebraska. And it's important for me, like I said, for coming back here, is that we're able to recruit locally. I would consider Iowa and Nebraska local compared to where I was recruiting in the past. And so
Yep.
there is a lot of options, but I think sometimes what we can offer here is, you can stay in state, but, I think there's also a field where some athletes want to get away, not too far away from home, but not also be right. You want to grow on your own a little bit without having to, go back home. I mean, obviously, if you want to do that, that's available in Iowa, right? But
Yep.
if you want to go not too far, but just far enough, then we're here to help with that.
Very good. Well, thank you very much for doing this. I enjoy every time I get to run into you. It's not as often as I'd like, but hopefully maybe in the next little bit, that we'll be
For
able
sure.
to reconnect a little bit more. Maybe next time you're in Sioux City, I can come over and see you.
We're going to be there in June, so I'll text you the time frames. Okay.
Perfect. Perfect. Sounds
All
good.
right.
You have a great night.
All right.
Hold on one
You too,
second though
Troy.
before I
Thanks for
interrupt
having
you.
me on.
Yep. Can you hold on real quick though? I got to ask you a couple
Sure.
questions off air.